We keep banging on about how it's impossible for us to time the market when we're considering how to invest our money. I've written a number of articles over the years in respect of this particular subject, and I've also published a couple of videos which talk about it as well. So I thought for this month's video we'd do something a little bit different and actually present to you some evidence as to the reasons why we take this point of view. So we've analysed some data going back to 1980. 1980 is a pretty interesting time for me. That's around about the time at which I started working full-time, back in the days before electricity and the real use of computers. But we've been able to obtain some information about Australian and international share markets going back to January 1980. And this we will use as the basis for the analysis for what we're going to talk about today. Now what we've taken here is three approaches to investing. So we have three investors who each have $200 per month to invest, and we're going to be investing over a very long period of time, that is nearly 40 years. Their approaches to investing are quite different. Two of them try to time the market, that is, they will try to pick what is in their view the optimal time for them to invest. The third invests regularly without thinking about it, simply adds $200 per month to their investment portfolio. And we've taken 40 years of very accurate data to do our analysis. So we've taken the ASX All Ordinaries index dating back to January 1980, which in fact is coincidentally the time at which that index was created. During that period in Australia at least, there have been four major market corrections. So the first of these is here in October of 1987, the Black Monday share market crash. I can well remember that time. It was a pretty serious correction in what had been happening in share markets both here and overseas. This one here is not quite so obvious. This particular thing is the recession we had to have in the early 1990s. You might remember our Treasurer and Prime Minister of the day, Paul Keating, referring to Australia as becoming a banana republic at around about this time. This one, and much more obvious, is the GFC during the period 2007, the late 2007 through to about 2009. And it looks quite significant, as you can see there. But let's remember that when we're talking about an index, the numbers have grown to be quite considerably larger. That fall there is around about a 50% fall. That fall there is around about a 50% fall. So you can see there's another market correction happening here, which is the one that we've just experienced in March and April of 2020, associated with the COVID-19 crisis. You can see we've had quite a significant recovery since the depths of that fall, but again, it was quite a significant fall, around about 35%. So our three investors are going to be investing throughout the period during the ups and downs. So the first one we're going to look at is Terrible Terry. Terry is a guy who really invests at exactly the wrong time during any period. So Terry's idea is that he's going to save his money, and then when he finally gets persuaded by all of his friends at the barbecue, he's going to invest when everybody else does, that is at the top of the market. So we can see here he has saved up his $200 per month on a month-by-month basis, and then invested it at exactly the wrong time, just before the October 1987 share market crash. Again, he did the same thing in the early 90s, and certainly leading up to the GFC, he was quietly putting his money away into a savings account at $200 per month until he could find exactly the wrong time to invest, which was at the peak of the market in around about January of 2008. Obviously the market fell dramatically thereafter. He then saved up and saved up and saved up over this period of time until around about February of 2020, invested what available funds he had into the market and watched it fall by about 35% through to the end of March this year. So Terrible is Terrible Terry has had a pretty rough time of it. Now I should mention that across this period our three investors have each injected into the market a total of 97,800. So even by investing at the worst possible time, Terry's done all right. In fact, his balance as at today is around about $175,000. Our second investor, Fortunate Frank, saves his money, $200 per month, but he has a working crystal ball. He sits and waits until he knows exactly the right time to invest, and he invests his money at the bottom of the market. So by timing his run, as we can see here, he's invested in the market just about this point of time, and then his balance recovers and recovers and recovers, and then he invests at this point of time. He's got a working crystal ball, which none of us do have, and his balance as at today is around about $252,000. Steady Eddie, on the other hand, doesn't really want to think about it very much. He just puts his money into the market every month regardless. In fact, he does it by a direct bank transfer. $200 per month into the market, whether the market's going up or it's going down. He's invested through the peaks and the troughs throughout the period of time, exactly the same amount of money as our other two investors, and as at today, his balance is $342,796 for having injected into the market 97,800. So there you have it. You can see exactly what the benefits of simply putting your money into the market on a regular basis, small amounts often, will give you the best results. If we have a look at a comparison of the three investors' portfolios over that period of time, you can see the charts there. Now it appears here that our friend Steady Eddie, who has had the best result in the end, had a most dramatic fall during the GFC. Well, of course he did. He had more money invested than any of the other two investors. The same would also be true here. But by continuing to invest throughout the period, and by doing so on a regular basis without considering what the market's actually doing, he's got the best result by the end. It's even more enhanced when you have a look at what might have happened had we had some international exposure. These are the same charts going back to 1979, having a look at investing our $200 per month solely into the S&P 500 index in the US. And as you can see, for investing around about $98,000 into the market, if we'd invested solely into the S&P 500 index in the US, Steady Eddie would have had around about 1.6 million. Our friend Frank, who can time the market perfectly, would have around about 1.1 million, and Terrible Terry would have something just less than $800,000. Still not a bad result. Now I asked myself when I was looking at these numbers, why is the US performance so much more dramatic than that of Australia? Well, the answer is quite simple. The indexes have performed quite differently over the 40-year period that we're looking at. The S&P 500 index in June of 1979 was created and had an opening balance or an opening number of around about 100. And by the time we get through to the present day, that number has grown, that index has grown to something more than 3,300. That is, it's multiplied by 30 times. During the same period, the Australian All Ordinaries index was created around about the same time with an opening number of 500, and today it's around about 6,000 or 6,200 or something of that nature. So if we see that as having been a multiple of times 12, whilst the US market has had a multiple of times around about 30 over the same period. Just goes to show you that having some international exposure also will bring you some benefits. So hopefully that will further underline what we've always said, which is that you simply cannot time the market. The best way to get the best results is to simply add in small amounts, invest regularly, don't try to time the market, and you'll get the best result.